Welcome back. Long time no see or hear. Jack Rutherford here with another informative and somewhat entertaining video on nopeds. Today, by popular demand, I'm going to begin the pw50 gear swap video. The pw50 gear swap how-to video. How about that? And what you're staring at in front of you is a pw50 rear differential that I picked up off of eBay. And I can only start off with part of this process because although I have a qt50 up above the pw50 rear differential, this qt50 already has pw50 rear gears in the back, but it was just a coincidence that they're both together like this. So anyhow, you can maybe I should just back up a little bit. You might be asking, well, Jack, you don't know Jack, or you might be saying that, but you might be asking, what's a pw50? Yeah, we'll start way back. We'll start back pw50. Well, pw50 is a kid's dirt bike made by Yamaha, which I think runs from the early 80s until present times. You can get a 2019 pw50, I believe, and go race it if you're young enough, or feel young enough anyways. And the thing about the Yamaha pw50 is it shares the same engine and transmission. In this case, shaft, or is the pw50 must be shaft drive. Yeah, what am I thinking? For a minute there I was thinking it was chain drive, but that can't be the case, or we wouldn't be doing this video at all. Shares the same engine, transmission, the shaft drive here, and carburetor, ignition system for the most part, and probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting about. Shares that all with the Yamaha qt50. So as a matter of fact, if you can find one, you could probably get a new Yamaha pw50 engine and just bolt it right up to the qt50, and you've got a brand new engine on your qt50. However, that might be rather expensive, but because pw50 I don't think is the bike, I don't think is very cheap, not cheap at all as a matter of fact, and the engine would probably run you a bit of money. But anyways, who would want to do that? I mean, there's no fun in swapping a new engine on. There's no excitement in that. So that's the pw50, a little bit of the history there. And although it shares the same drive shaft, the gearing is different because the pw50 has much smaller wheels, and the pw50 is meant for racing around a motocross track where top end is not that important. What is important is takeoff speed. And so somebody discovered that it was advantageous, and I guess it's because it's a Yamaha OEM part, and the AMA rules make allowance for this, that you could take the rear gears off of a qt50 and put them in a pw50, and it would be geared more for low end and takeoff speed. And then if you did the opposite, if you take the pw50 rear gears and put them in the Yamaha qt50, then the qt50 is geared more for top end. And as a matter of fact, the whole point of doing this is you can gain about somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% onto your top end speed. Generally, if you have some other performance modification like a performance exhaust, or maybe a bigger top end, or maybe both, in order to turn basically a taller gear. Because the engine's, you know, on the stock qt50, I think I did it and really didn't notice much. Maybe I went from 30 to 32 or 30 to 33. I forget. It was a long time ago, but I remember being kind of disappointed. However, if you've got a qt50 that does 40, you may see 44, 45 miles an hour. 10% is probably a rough guideline. You can calculate it out, and I've done that in the past, but I don't really remember, except for the fact that, you know, baseline rule, I think, is about a 10% gain. So, with that lengthy introduction, let's get on with it here. So we got my pw50 rear differential off of eBay for about 85 or 90 bucks. I forget what. Maybe closer to 100 with shipping. I forget. But anyhow, it is well worth it, and I'll explain that later. And I've kind of already taken this. I've got a confession to make. You know, I hate to admit this, but I kind of started without you. But I've already taken out the I want to call it the main gear, the bigger gear. There's two gears you have to worry about: the pinion gear and the ring gear. I've taken the ring gear out already. So let's. I'll just briefly show you how that's done, so you don't feel like you missed anything. If I can find my Phillips screwdriver, I thought I just had it out here. There it is. So basically, to get the ring gear out, there's just, you know, these are either 3 Phillips screws, or sometimes they're, I think maybe someone had replaced them with bolts in the past, but my friend has a qt50 that we're going to do this to, and this had been sitting around apart for months waiting on him, and still has not happened. So I kind of put it back together, because I'd already lost a lock washer off of it, which is no big deal. So you can kind of see the greasy mess that it is in there. And then I've got the ring gear already out, and I'm going to take off this. This is actually, I don't think it came with an axle nut. This is actually off a Honda Express, but basically, you know, the ring gear just, if I can line up the splines, which for some reason I can't, but anyways, this goes all the way in, and you basically kind of push it out from the other side. And then one thing you want to keep track of, excuse me, is this little washer spacer that goes on the back side with this in it. This goes in, so don't lose that, because you'll need that later. And this one actually took a little bit of persuasion to get out. I ended up having to just press this out. I don't know if it was probably frozen to the bearing, or one of the bearings in here. There's 2 bearings, one right there and one on the other side. This bearing isn't all the way in, but this spacer goes over the axle on top of the bearing there. So you get that out, and then I'm going to use this nut later. We're going to have to press this gear off of this axle, because the pw50 axle is meant for a wider tire, so it's longer than the qt50 axle. So we want to press this axle out of this gear and press in a qt50 axle into this gear, and then swap the qt50 ring gear onto the pw50 axle later. Let me set this up in the vise, and we'll go from there. Alright, I've cleaned off a lot of the grease on this because I'm going to apply heat to this gear with this crappy propane torch for about 10 minutes or so, because that'll make it a lot easier to press the axle out of the gear. So I'm not going to catch this on film because I'm going to have to set up the camera over at the press, because when I transfer this I got to be ready to go so it doesn't cool down on me. And obviously if you're heating this up, don't grab it with your bare hands. Have something ready to transport this over to the press so you don't burn yourself. And always be safe with fire, number one. Number two, since there is still some grease on this, it's going to let off quite a bit of noxious smoke and fumes. So I've got plenty of ventilation going in here, so hopefully I don't get to, inhale too much of it. So you'll see us next at the vise, hopefully, if everything goes smoothly. Alright, we've got it in the vise. I've got the nut protecting the threads. Let's see what we can do here. There you go. She's out. That wasn't too bad, actually. Obviously, or it should be obvious anyways, press can be it's a dangerous machine. I don't mean to sound like a ninny about this all, but definitely don't want to stand in front of the thing that you're pressing, because if it's not stable, it'll come flying out at you with quite a bit of force and velocity. And given how hot it is, I don't want it hitting me either. But I used the nut on the threads to protect the threads, because I had to press it through that way. And I was thinking of something else here, and I got a little flustered, and I forgot what I was thinking. Oh, generally it's good to, if you have the press set up on a concrete floor, it's good to have something underneath to catch whatever you're pressing before it hits the concrete. Save yourself a little agony and frustration by not damaging a part that you want to use again. Luckily the nut caught it here. And so now, to give you a preview of what's to come, I've got to get the qt50 differential and do the same thing, press the axle out of that, and then put the qt50 axle on the pw50 gear and the pw50 axle on the qt gear, because I'm going to put the qt gears in the pw50 differential, and you generally can make a little bit of money on eBay selling those back to the pw50 guys, because there's more of a market for those than there is of qt50 guys who want pw50 gears, because you got a whole, several generations of kids racing these pw50s, and in some places where they race, it's legal, I guess, under the American Motorcycle Association to use basically OEM parts. In this case, it'd be the qt50 gears on the pw50. So it's not illegal in some places to do that. So there you have it. We'll pick up hopefully here in the near future, and you can see the rest of the process. And as I indicated in a previous video that some of you had watched, that were requesting that I continue forward with this project, the ring and pinion gear always go together. So there's two gears. So all you need to know is the pw50 ring and pinion gear, you're going to transfer both of those to the qt50, and the qt50 ring and pinion gears you're going to transfer to the pw50. So I'll let this cool down, and it's ready to go for whenever I get my qt50 differential. And I guess real quick, since somebody will probably might be wondering, is how you get this rear differential off. Well, you want to take off the axle nut on the other side of the bike, and then there's 3 bolts here. You want to undo your shock, and I think it'll be fine on the center stand, I forget, but take the tire off, and take the nut off, take the tire off, undo the shock, get the shock out of the way, then take these 3 bolts out, and I guess you've also got to take the rear fender off, I forgot about that, and you've got to undo the brake cable. Sorry, I'm remembering all this stuff a little too late. So just to back up, axle nut, do the rear fender, get that off, take off the rear tire, undo the brake, undo the brake cable, remove the shock bolt and move the shock out of the way, then take these 3 bolts out, and you should be able to get the differential off from there. So there you have it. I guess maybe this is cool enough. Maybe I can grab it and bring it over here. Yeah. And that was just a propane torch. It's still pretty hot. I guess I need to get it in camera here. Still pretty hot, so let's see if I can get this bolt off. Or the nut, sorry. Nut's kind of hot. Flip it back over. There you go. There's the axle out of it, and there's the gear out of it. So, as a matter of fact, when I was heating it up, it looked like it might have moved. Maybe the grease was just burning out of it and the gap was bigger. I don't know. So, alright, stay tuned for hopefully maybe just one more part, and we'll go from there.